You just fine.
Okay, fantastic.
Real time. How's it going, Akilah?
I'm doing well. First live. I'm excited
Right?
to see how this goes.
Awesome.
So, how has your day been? How are you?
Off to a good start. Working on quite a couple
You said
things here.
working on.
Oh, just all my usual items. Doing some, you could say, legal paperwork, preparing for a program that I'm putting together.
Hmm.
A little intimacy deep dive, a 6 week thing.
Yeah,
So I'm
that's
working through
awesome.
the inner parts of that. I'm excited about it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I will start by letting you introduce yourself because you do
All
it so
right.
well. To my
Thank you.
followers.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
aloha to all the followers of Akilah 722. This is Ezriyah bin Ernst. Go by Universal Soul Surfer. I am an intimacy coach, and more so, I'm a health physicist and a healer. So I've got a couple of different hats, as well as a poet. And what I'm into is providing spaces for people to heal and to move deeper into their awareness of intimacy. And by virtue of that, there's other modalities that I use, such as this biofield tuning instrument here and energy work to essentially just help to reintroduce you to a more healthy version of you, from romance to dietary things to detox. But it's about being the fullness of who you are as a human being, and that's what my journey is to help people step into that space.
Right. That's wonderful. And we know each other because I am friends with your siblings who I went to high school with. And
You
I
know
think,
them
were
better than
you?
me.
Yes, those are my friends. And so, yeah, we weren't necessarily connected very closely in high school, but as of late, we have reconnected, I guess, within the quarantine, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so we've been having some very interesting conversations that I think the benefit is to have these conversations out loud so that others can, hey, Freddie, so
Aloha,
that
everybody.
so that others can benefit from, just the discourse. I think that a lot of times, and especially now where we have so much access to all this information, people are really trying to eat it up. And it's hard to consume all of this information in a scope that is not necessarily your own.
Hmm.
And I think that hearing other perspectives and how other people are kind of digesting it is important. And I think that the things that we talk about are still interesting. So I think that other people will feel that way as well.
Good. I hope so. Hope everyone gains something from our
Yeah.
conversation. I enjoy speaking with you, and
Yeah.
I've witnessed that your eyes have been open since the first time. I feel like since the first time we met, and then when I
Hmm.
saw you again at Savannah's, because you're a skateboarder, I was like, all right, she knows something. She knows something.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. I was skateboarding yesterday. So I did a lot yesterday. It was, I was being
Okay.
really ambitious. I played soccer with a group of 6 to 10-year-olds.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's ambitious right there. Yes, that's
For the
gotta have the
first
energy
time
up
in
for that.
like, hi Christina. For the first time in like, I don't know, 5, 10 years. And, it was a lot. And I was like, no, I got it. I can do this. And, and then I skateboarded afterwards. So it was kind of like, okay, you're doing a lot, which I felt good about at the time. And then this morning, when I woke up, I felt a little differently.
Right.
So,
I'll give you this,
so,
that day that on Vanna's graduation, when you let me
uh-huh.
ride the skateboard, that was the first time I've ridden a board since 2009. And
Oh,
then
wow.
like I got to skateboard with another young lady out in San Diego, maybe right before the quarantine started.
Hmm.
And then I was like, well, if I'm not getting to the beach, I might as well get a carver.
Right,
So, but I
right.
thought of you for my
That's
recent,
awesome.
yeah, I took a little stroll.
Oh, I got one too, and I
Yeah.
guess I should say that it's from riding my skateboard because it would sound, I guess, cooler. But I was just running. I hit
Oh,
a
damn.
sprint and I tripped. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, at least you're taking some action. So I fell in front of
Exactly.
this old lady, and she's like, "Oh, you young man." I was like, "I'm 38," and it hurts like a 38-year-old. It hurt when they fall like that. But
I mean, facts. But I'm trying to stay active, so we're good there. Um, Okay, so if I had to put a name on this segment, because I've been thinking about this a little bit, it would be a conversation around what's the loudest voice in your head
Hmm,
and how to tweak the volumes.
marvelous. That's an awesome
So
title. What's the loudest voice in your head and how to tweak the volumes? Meaning turn it
yeah.
up or turn it down. Or either.
So yeah, I mean turn that voice that's the loudest one up or down, but also, kind of like, I mean, I'm not as musically inclined as maybe some others are, but they have the little synthesizers that you can kind of tweak all the different
Mm,
volume levels and the bass and the treble and the
yeah, yeah,
reverb and
the
all that.
EQ. Huh?
Yeah, I feel like, being able to kind of be aware of what is that loudest voice and how you tune in to it and how you kind of pivot throughout it, um, is kind of what drives all of us, whether we acknowledge it openly or not. We all have those inner voices that drive us. And so I know that you are very in touch with your inner voice. And you know, a couple things that I had sent you before, one of which being that head, heart, gut, brain connection.
Yeah.
I'm just interested to see because I've heard you talk on your some other lives about things that you've gone through in the past, and not necessarily to say, oh, run through your whole history, but I'm
Mhm.
kind of interested to see and understand how you feel that whole head, heart, gut correlation played out in certain situations and
Yeah.
experiences and times in your life, and kind of how you um, manage that.
I guess I'll give the family like a little background on myself. I've been working in the industry of health physics, which is essentially cleaning up radioactive material for a good portion of my adult life. So 15 years of working post collegiate life was, right in that field. And so in that field, you're working with radioactive material and other hazardous chemical materials. And along the way, Solstice, what's up, sister? One of my fams out here. I um I just was like a robot. Everything that was moving me along on my path was I'm trying to be this. My personal voice I felt was very small. There was the upbringing where you kind of have a personality, but I would typically reserve my thoughts. And there was religion that was like, okay, I'm going to do what I need to do to be a good Catholic or Christian or whatever. And then there was relationships where I'm chasing my mama between the legs of different people, but I don't know that, right? And so I had a lot of paradigms crashed, and throw that in with cancer. I've had to deal with cancer twice, and going through a good medical team, but having Western medicine also do things to my body that had secondary effects, and having to do it again. I decided to essentially like try to get in tune with myself and recognize that a lot of what's driving me has nothing to do with me. The biggest, most profound moment that I had on that journey in regards to that was going through what's called a Vipassana meditation. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
I haven't. You broke up slightly though. I heard something meditation.
Yeah, it's called Vipassana. So Vipassana
Vipassana.
meditation
Okay.
is
Hmm.
essentially you can go for 10, 14, 30, a couple of months time of solitude and
Hmm.
silence. You take certain vows and you go through this meditation where you're not cursing, there's no sex, there's no profane speech, no lying, and then to cap it off, you take a vow of silence to help you with all the other ones. And then you do this for 10 days and you learn the Buddhist technique of meditation, which is navigating the breath through the body and connecting with it. And then essentially you begin to scan your frame. But in that space, what also happened for me is I begin to hear voices of other people. I could hear Stephen Banner's voice. They weren't so loud, but more like mom and dad's,
Hmm.
grandma, grandpa, uncles, a lot of my exes, and the things that I was hearing, those weren't positive things that were echoing continually.
Mm.
So in my hearing them and becoming aware of them, I could either release and say, this isn't me, this isn't me. And towards the end of that, I began to hear another voice, and that was my voice. And I'm like, this is me. Wow, I haven't been operating as me this whole time, and that totally changed the trajectory of everything I did after that. After
So
that, I
you had
decided
to filter through all of those voices to even get to your voice, you're saying?
I had to recognize that, filter through and really like make the decision, whose voice do I want to advocate for the rest of this journey and how am I going to do that? So the rest of my path has been a journey from that, from illness, from being suicidal, depression, navigating all these spaces and having what I thought was, you know, as you dig into things, you realize a lot of things that you think are not.
Hmm.
And just honoring that and being like, all right, well, I'm advocating the voice of Ezriyah, Derek, Ernst, Albert, on
Hmm.
this journey, and also the unnamed part of myself.
Yeah. And so during that time, so the going back to cancer, I think that most people probably have a pretty close connection, unfortunately, to somebody who either has had or is currently going through cancer. Um, do you think there was an emotional or, um, I guess, environmental impact that played a role in your cancer?
Yeah. Now here's where we
And
get
if
to
so,
the mind,
hmm
body, and heart connection with all
hmm
that.
hmm
Is there was definitely an emotional connection. Emotionally, you store things within your body. We have things
right.
in all of our bodies that have been stored from our ancestors in these
hmm
bodies. They don't, unless you can pay attention to them and go through certain processes to release with intention, you will continue to perpetuate those things. It's like turning certain genes on and off, which which is something that we're not told a lot about, but it's just the truth. And so being disconnected from myself, not knowing what it means to really navigate with an intention that serves what I'm trying to be on this journey, not being in tune with my intuition. A lot of what we're taught in these bodies, at least for sure, is there's this linear way of thinking, and that's it. We go to school, we become indoctrinated in a way of thinking that's not in tune with how we were taught generations before, how we were shown and guided into connecting with all that exists. And so we become disconnected, and then that disconnection created dis-ease within me. And so my
hmm
health has gotten better. I've lost, much weight. I'm a lot stronger than I was before, and I've come into a lot of different understanding, I'd say,
hmm
that I don't usually. But yeah.
Yeah. So pivoting slightly to, something that you mentioned, which is, um, what you're taught in school and how you're indoctrinated and how we were taught and how we learned in the past. And melanated people, and we're both have Caribbean parents who, they operate on a very specific paradigm. I think you could say it's fair.
That's really
And,
well.
I got Caribbean parents. I got to put it well. So,
You coming back from the
right,
other
and
land?
so right. My sister sent me something today, which was so hilarious, but I'll share later.
Okay.
So, um, in terms of that teach learning experience,
Hmm.
that has historically been something that you learn within the household and something that you can see emulated around you, or embodied around you. And now we kind of go to school and we're taught this. I mean, watered down is a nice way to put it, but I mean, this complete fallacy of
Yeah.
what our history is. So I know that you have a child. How exactly are you, I guess, formulating the, I guess, not carrying on those generational curses, if you will, or making sure that uh, your child is looking at things within a framework that they can hear their own voice now.
Well, I came in with that. First, let me just be blunt. We're in a system of white supremacy, right? And so
Clearly.
within that system, then you have everything that's affected within a system, which is the ecosystem. Some components that I subscribe to in the ecosystem are education and
Hmm.
economic, labor, law, politics, war, sex, and all of those are connected. So when you affect someone in one area, you affect them in the other. Now, I recall one time, and my daughter is mixed, quote unquote mixed, right? She's her mother's white, blonde hair, blue eyes. I am chocolate as it comes. We could get a little bit more chocolate, but it tells me being in the sun. And not to refer to me as food, but, you know, I'm good stuff. So, so it's like coming into that situation naive, and then realizing, oh, there's all these. I learned about racism in so many different ways, and I see how what I want to pass on to my daughter. It's been very difficult. One, we're not in contact right now. That's a difficulty. But what I do is I continue to prepare myself. You know, there's the spending of money and the other things that you do through legality, but I don't have the same ability to impart what I'd like to for the time being. So what I'm doing is cultivating a lot of that, but allowing her the space to have that experience, because there's going to come a time when she wants to know, Dad, where are we from? What is it about? What is this side of my family about? What is this here about? You know, but I went back to Africa all the way, and I traced our roots to the tribes. So she wants to know and have a real sense of self that she can't find in this educational system, in this environment, you know, that's really not created to do anything but suppress us. Granted, we can still rise, you know, but it's a place of suppression. Well, when she's ready to break through the suppression of that knowledge of self, I'm cultivating as much of it as I can within myself so that I can part to her if she so chooses.
Right. Excuse me.
Now I may go ahead and have some more kids if I'm fortunate, you know, and then I'm definitely going to raise them in a different way, with a lot more, you know, truth, a lot more of what wasn't passed. What my parents, I still don't feel. I'm not knocking them, but I feel like, you know, we still come from some generations that uphold white supremacy, and quite frankly, I still uphold it because I'm not clear in all my actions, and it still exists. So until it disappears, I still feel like I'm still perpetuating it. But I want to look inside and continue to remove as much as I can so that I can be the fullness of me. Because the fullness of me is not a being that's suppressed.
Right. I think that it's important for everyone to, and I know it's hard to do, especially with a Caribbean parent, because we are taught and we are, I guess, be obedient in a sense. You know, I've always been a little bit more slick at the mouth, so I got beaten a lot. But right. But so, you know, there have been so many good, strong, foundational lessons that, you know, I would never replace. But I think it's also important for people to understand that their parents are human and they're fallible. And the places that, you know, and I know failed is a harsh word, but I mean, you got to call a spade a spade. You know, it may not, it's not failure in the sense that like, oh, you can never be right or you can never do anything that rectifies this, but rather, you know, there's a lesson to be learned here, and there may be a different perspective that I can pull from that, and being able to impart that on, you know, your children moving forward. I don't think that that's something that you can do if you have not yet acknowledged, you know, kind of where things went awry. So I know that that's a little bit difficult, but, you know, parents have to understand that we have to grow.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I've done is I looked at back when I was certainly like I was in the Hebrew Israelite times. I don't think we ran across each other when I was real super serious with that.
No,
I was quite zealous, you know.
I still have that would have been really interesting. Like I would be down for a conversation. Go ahead.
Yo, I mean, I still got a lot of love for the Hebrew Israelites, you know, and I maintain my name Ezriyah as well from that. So being Haitian and changing your name, you know, naming yourself, like, sure, everyone's like, oh, big up to Malcolm X and to, you know, Muhammad Ali, but when you try to do it, they're like, I'm like, I am the Malcolm of my soul, you know, at this point. And so I had to look at the difference between being obedient and statutes of limitations on that, and then honoring your parent. I honor my parent because I've come forth through them. They had me. Now they can't pull me into their thing, but I'll take them into my thing, you know. But I'm honoring them. I honor them by looking at their journey and saying, okay, you did the best possible thing anything could do for me, is by creating a body for me and allowing me to navigate through space and time, and protected me as best as you could. All you knew. So thank you. And now I come forth. I'm like, okay, how do I honor you? I honor you by being the fullness of me because I am your liberation, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. First
Mm-hmm.
and foremost, I'm going to be my liberation. And, I just try to keep it respectable in the dialogue because I didn't always do that as well
Mm-hmm.
and honor where it's at. But really, it's really important for those of us now to come forth and be the fullness of who we can believe ourselves to attain to be for the
Yeah.
next generation coming because they're just going to springboard off of you.
Right. Speaking of the next generation and, kind of our upbringing, the state of, I mean, I could say the world, but let's go more specifically the state of the United States.
Okay.
And kind of just the programming that we touched on a little bit earlier. Um, I know that for me personally, I consider myself moderately disciplined. I think that, I can do better in certain areas, but there's certain things that I have, unequivocally realized. And my sister's on, she's gonna make fun of me because, never mind. Nikki a shout
Hey,
out.
sis.
Uh,
Aloha. Shout out.
um, what I realized was that, what I eat
Hmm.
100% impacts how I feel and how I operate.
Yeah.
I may just be more sensitive than a lot of people, or maybe just because. So I have become allergic, and this is within the past 10 years, to gluten, um, dairy. I'm intolerant to high fructose corn syrup. I'm a bit sugar averse. And, all of these things have kind of just, been a rolling happening. And so, I honor my body. I've, for probably the past 10 years been this way. And then as of late, I've stopped eating meat to a large degree. I mean, if I, get the hankering for some fish or something, I'll eat it. It's not like I must do this or else. It's like I'm going to honor
Yeah.
myself. And so, um, but I notice it, and because my body is devoid of a lot of these toxins, so to speak, I can like smell it on other people. Like my sense of smell has always been good, but it's a little too good now. Or when
Hmm.
I'm fasting, I can like smell the, I mean, it's gross, but like the putrefaction of toxins in people's bodies.
Yeah.
And that was me before. I was eating all types of things that I shouldn't eat, to the point where I literally thought that after you ate, you were supposed to be relatively uncomfortable. Like, it's just what you do. And, that a lot of that like microbiome misalignment that was happening was creating so I was a little bit militant back in my day as well. I've always been pretty outspoken, and it was very much so a rebel with every cause. Like, oh, what?
Yeah.
You need somebody to fight something? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I volunteer. I'm
Boom.
coming. I'm here for you.
Right on.
Um, and so changing those things and then realizing the electric um, the electric value of my body and how
Mm.
that connects to everything around me has, I mean, it's night and day. Like, I when people, so I've had a couple people who, because I've played sports my whole life, I played soccer in college, and we were on a very strict regimen. So, I would come back for the summer and I'd be like ripped, and it's like, I don't know if, you want to do this. Like, I don't know if that's,
Uh,
something plausible, but, I would train my friends and whatnot, and it would be very difficult
mhm.
if they weren't eating a certain way to be able
Yeah.
to connect mentally to, a level that allowed them to say, okay, like this is holistically beneficial and I can feel it because they, that head gut, brain gut communication was being blocked. And so with you and your intimacy soul sessions, I'm curious as to how that maybe emotional intelligence and, like psychological processing is impacted past, or if it has any correlation, if you factor it in any way when you are having these soul sessions. Because it's one thing to say, okay, let's talk, let's connect, let's be intimate. I'm going to listen, you're going to listen, and, feel comfortable. It's another thing to leave then and be like, well, that was great, but now I want to go into a hole because my body can't process this.
I like what you're speaking to, and this is why I'm creating a longer program. I think if it was up to me, I'd do a 12-month journey for each person that wants to work with me. And so I'm gonna set something up for clients like that, because part of my whole system, LOCOJI, the method that I use, love, courage, justice, and experiential integration, you're speaking to the integration part. So there's going through the process, expressing what you want to do, coming up with a plan, but carrying out the plan, and then like creating something to where this becomes part of your everyday life, and you can acknowledge and see and utilize the wisdom from what you've just gone through is important. I do believe that the person's diet, because we're working with a bioenergetic system, is important, because you need the right minerals, you need the right nutrients for the build water and hydration. A lot of people are going through things because they're simply dehydrated. I've posted a couple of times. I don't know if this book spoke to me. I think this book's a good read right here. I don't know if you can see it. Very simple.
You're not sick, you're thirsty. Boom. Yes. I mean, I've never read it, but 100%.
Yeah, I suggest people check that out. It's very simple reading, but it's what our modern day, medicine does do. Most of us are coming out as kids dehydrated, and you're going throughout your entire life dehydrated. So asthma, certain allergies, certain things that the body quickly fight off, because it's more about frequency and energy, and the conjugate geometry of how your body is meant to be. But when you take away from that and you don't hydrate the body, you need water, because water runs all the electricity and all the processes in the body, then you start to fall short. And the body, what it does is, it's like it prioritizes. So it's going to prioritize your brain functioning over everything else, right? Because that's what's moving. But other things will fall by the wayside. So if you think you just begun to be dehydrated by the time your mouth is dry, you're way off. Your feet will start to get a little dry. We think the ashy skin, we just put lotion on it, but you need to hydrate from the inside out. So the gut is actually the brain. You have the big brain, which is the gut. Then you have the little brain, which is what does what the gut tells you to do. That's why you have things in your stomach that guide you, that make you eat. Things invade the body and they take over. They latch into your system through the gut, and then they control you through the center up here. It's not the other way around. So when your gut's full of nonsense, your brain's full of nonsense too, and you can't make.
So explain to me two things. Number one, what types of water you should be drinking, and number two, what is nonsense that you put into your.
Nonsense would be anything. I think. All right, let's start with the type of water. Now, people think, oh, we should jump on alkaline water, right? Alkaline is important, but alkaline is still acidic, because all of our water is acidic. So I think what's more important to look into is the benefits of magnesium, and checking out your balance between sodium and potassium, because those two create a hydroelectric effect in the cells. So I would say look into sodium, potassium, and then also magnesium, because magnesium aids in the healing and the electrical potential movement in the human body. And so those are things that are worth taking into. I recently purchased something called the Hydrolux that adds more carbon to water. So I'm connected with a group called Secret Energy, and so I have my own product I'm able to sell. But I test everything out for close to a year first before I even speak on it. So I'm reaching my year mark. Now you're seeing me post certain things, except for the Healy, because I've been looking into it for longer than a year, and this is frequency device. And so it's all working with the body electricity. We're electric bodies, especially with all this melanin.
Right.
Now, was that adequate? And should I move on to the nonsense? Or?
Yeah, sure. I was going to say, one thing I was going to say, it's gone. It'll come back. It comes back. I'll bring it up.
You interrupt me at any time, because you know how the Alberts speak, right?
Yes, we'll do.
Yeah, I'll speak about myself. Yeah, so with Now, when I'm referring to nonsense,
Hmm.
well, let's talk about following the logic. We're in a system of insanity. Okay? We're in a system that says everything that you do has to benefit certain people and repress other people. So that's going to factor into what people are prescribing to you to eat, what's being made readily available by, stores to eat. Like really looking into and trying to connect with what is it that your ancestors ate? Okay, if you can't get that, what is right for the body? A lot of us don't even understand our bodies. I am still, and I've helped people heal, and I'm still continually studying, like just quick flash, but it's a mess. Boom, boom. Like I got books all over the place. I don't know if you're able
Hmm.
to see. It's embarrassingly messy, but like I think it's worth it to put a lot of effort and time into understanding this frame, but your
Hmm.
specific frame. So
Hmm.
nonsense is defined as anything that you're putting into your frame that's having an adverse effect, because then it's unable to work at its maximum potential. We're in bodies that are
Right.
dying a lot earlier than they need to.
Right.
Yeah. And so for
Um,
me,
Go ahead.
I'm just saying, like for me, I was in my 20s, late 20s, early 30s, cancer the first time, and
Hmm.
I had testicle removal. It was testicular cancer. Then I did
Hmm.
radiation. Then my renal artery stopped working, so I have metal inside my, this artery
Hmm.
here, like a chain link
Hmm.
to block that off. And then there was like, having fillings plus that other metal in my
Hmm.
body. So there's all this
Hmm.
toxicity that I've had to work through. And then clearing emotional wounds from the divorces, from just coming into an understanding of the reality that we're navigating more deeply, especially as a black man, but also working with certain government entities and everything else. So it's like I had a lot of hard truths hit me, and I had to process that emotion. And there's not much guidance in terms of how do we process the emotion. So we're a people, majority of human beings, I'll even throw them in there, but specifically us, who have been generationally emotionally molested, and we carry traumas that we don't even get to speak to. So the
Right.
trauma, and we exacerbate the traumas by the way we deal with each other. And so
Hmm.
then it's magnified. I'm fortunate that I had time to go off. I got sent to the islands. And because of my job, I wasn't able to really integrate into the society there too much because I had to keep a low profile for the work I was doing. So
Hmm.
that just left me and nature.
Yeah.
And and so it was like, okay, I got to commune with nature and get that silence.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
think that that's super important. I think that that's a topic that's, hey, Lizzie, that's a topic
aloha.
that's come up a couple times of silence, right?
Mhm.
And so I was reading something today or yesterday about how the simple act of meditation actually changes. So it regulates stress in a very particular way, and as those stress signals are not being sent, it changes your microbiome. And
Yeah.
overall has a holistic impact on your health. So it's not just you're clearing your mind, you're actually taking steps towards health simply by meditating. And that silence that, a lot of people are missing. And, I'm guilty of it too. Yes, I meditate. But, I'm kind of, I don't know the word for it. I always say busybody, but my mom's like, that's not what busybody means. I'm like, okay, well, like I'm always, there's always something that I can be doing or can be researching. I mean, there's a couple people on this live who would be like, "Ugh, yes, you just won't relax yourself." And it's just because I feel like there's so much to consume that I just want to download all into my head. And then like it's at a point I'll get kind of out of whack where I'm like, why do I feel like this? Like, feel like I've been eating great. I've been hydrating. I've been, feeding my brain. And it's that I haven't taken the time to get silent and get quiet and not direct my mind and kind of just let the universe kind of, I guess, relax me and give me the input and the feedback that I need. And so I think that that's super important. If there's anything that you want to add on, how to do it, or I mean, I know a couple people have asked me how I do it, and I think that meditation can take a couple different forms. I was talking to a friend last night who rides. That friend is also your brother, and he was saying that it allows him to really clear his mind,
Yeah.
and I think that in situations like that where you're kind of on autopilot, where you're not directing anything, it's a form of meditation. So,
Yeah, it's supposed to.
feel free to speak on it, add something.
Well, I've been an observer for a long time. I've observed Stephen, in his like in the things that he goes into flow state with. Not just that, but also working in vehicles. He's
Mm-hmm.
part mechanic from like I
Mm-hmm.
remember when he would just take like a little blue car. I'm not gonna bust him out there, but I mean I'm just really like play with the car and he'd be driving the car, but he's looking at the wheels. He's just so in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
So in the
Mm-hmm.
zone. I'm like, great man, I get the TV all to myself. So with the car.
Gotcha.
And but look how what's
Yeah.
come out of that.
Right.
So meditation, I learned a technique, but really it permeates into everything. My entire life now has become a meditation because
Yeah.
of intention. And so what happens is that we're bombarded with so much stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
for you, and keep this in mind, you're operating um, in a different capacity because of how you by nature have had to navigate being alive with your body and with the things that
Mm-hmm.
don't gel well. But
Mm-hmm.
you're fortunate that all those things, granted, they've created discipline. Well, that's a good thing. They've
Yeah.
stopped you from shit that people have a hard time getting away from. I think it's a good thing. I'm grateful for my cancer and for the things I've been exposed to,
For
because
sure.
like a lot of shit people are stressing about, I don't even think about. I don't eat meat, But here's what I know: you don't even have to eat. You're in a body that does not even have to eat food. Okay,
That
and I've
part.
gone on a 28 day fast. I've gone one on purpose and another one I didn't intend to. That's when I ended up at Stephen's place, last year. But like
Mm-hmm.
I just I'm really in tune with some of the magic of the human body. But because I've had to learn hard knocks in the kind of hard
Mm-hmm.
knocks way, I've also done medicine journeys. So I've seen
Mm-hmm.
a version of this reality and navigated that with some of the tools that have come to me along the way that just aren't talked about often. But I feel like more people are heading in that direction, but they're just tools.
Right.
One thing Dan told me, what I call of a mentor, the guy who taught me how to surf in Hawaii, his name
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
Iwani.
Mm-hmm.
I go to this meditation retreat and I come back and I'm like, wow, I just did this journey with all that. And he goes, good for you, son. He's also a Vietnam vet, so he's like, he's got one of these. He's like, good for you, son. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
thinking like, what the hell, man? You're gonna bust my bubble? He's like, you know what? Real person, a real meditator is meditating all the time. Try keeping that state while you're amongst people. And so that became my
Mm.
goal, to find that inner silence and that peace in the loud. And we're all
Mm-hmm.
capable of it.
Yeah.
So running, soccer, skateboarding, all my activities become meditation.
Yeah.
Surfing is such a meditation of connecting.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
love making. My love making is a meditation. It's not. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
not trying to get off. I am
Yeah.
eventually, but
Sure.
like really diving into it. So the intimacy journey, the sessions, these are actually
Mm-hmm.
all journeys in different facets of meditation that
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to a person's field.
Sure.
I give
No. I was gonna pivot. So do you have like a timer on your thing that tells you how much time we have?
It'll tell us when it's like when we have 1 minute left. It'll show, but
Okay,
I've
got it.
I
Okay.
cleared some space for us to chat today. So if you got time, if it ends on mine, we can go up to
No, yeah, no, I have time. You just know this is first time in live, so got
yeah,
it.
it's tequila time.
Um, okay, so let's pivot because like I have a bunch of things written down because there's always a bunch of stuff going on in my head. Um, let's pivot to okay, so getting kind of back to a state where somebody who like myself is constantly in a thoughtful state, and always looking to feed my brain, feed my soul, feed my ambitions, feed my goals, and all of that. It's led me to the concept of a lot of community run and community led things. One of those, and I mean, this is just a basic concept, but I feel like, especially with the way that our education system is set up, where people don't necessarily get the knowledge and are there's so many things that either I've posted or I've seen posted or people have asked me about where it's like they just never knew. Like I posted some pictures of some pretty brutal pictures of slavery and post-slavery even. And these are a lot of things that, I guess I had a phase where it was just like I really was consuming because I like history, because I think that as far back as you can go,
Hmm.
and as many things as you can connect throughout that history, the better your perspective. And, I had come across a lot of these things, and there are things that went to fuel my anger to the point where it was like, oh yeah, I'm down for the fight. Whatever it is, count me
Yeah.
in.
Hmm.
But a lot of people haven't seen these images before. They've never been taught about, what was going on in these time frames, and thus they have to then say, consume it themselves. So I'm in finance, and finance is a very white male dominated place to the
Hmm.
point where my manager, so I was on the operations side of things where I was like going out and running the analysis. And then I was recruited to the sales side because it, I asked one too many questions is really what it was. But it was turned out to be, a good fit. They wanted me for the position. And my manager told me up front, he was like, I was like, well, I've never done sales, so you're gonna have to teach me sales 101. And he was like, I don't want to teach you anything. Whatever you've been doing, that's what I want you to keep doing. And,
Okay.
don't change anything, and definitely don't change your hair. And I was like,
What? He
okay.
said that, huh? Hmm.
Well, and this is the thing. I know him,
How
and
was your hair before? Was
no,
it?
no, it was like this. It was a
Okay.
fro,
Okay.
right?
Cool.
So
Cool.
it was like, so on the one hand, it was like, okay, yeah, dope. But on the other hand, it was like, who are you to tell me what to do with my hair?
Uh,
But I knew that it was coming from a place of, you're gonna stand out in these rooms, period, for obvious
right.
reasons. Don't let that make you feel like you have to change anything, even something as simple as your hair. So, and he's a white male, so
Oh,
I, was like,
that's good.
I can respect that. And it's raised a lot of conversations, both externally and internally with my clients and with my company. I've been getting calls from, my clients wanting to have conversations about, racism and, the history essentially. And so two things, and then I'll let you jump in, is one, I think that it's impossible for any one person to consume the amount of knowledge that is out there to consume. So I'm a fan of communal type things, like you read a book, I read a book, we teach each other the book, so I don't have to read your book and I still have the information. So A, what place you feel like that has and where? And then two, you know, the approach that I have been using both internally and externally is kind of like, if I could fly above all of this racial division and oppression in terms of, there's so, like, this is a low vibration issue, guys. Like, let's just get
Right.
this shit out of the way so that we can go higher. But it's there and it's palpable, and it's the battleground, I feel like, right now, where it's a war on consciousness and your access to information, and where you have your Twitters and YouTubes and whatnot taking down people's stories, whether they're factual or not, because they have so much of a following that it's going to potentially steer too many people away from what you're supposed to be looking at.
Mm.
So I guess, just your interpretation and I, um, the best way for, like, adults who aren't in school and have that just free time, how do you integrate that kind of communal sense of knowledge and consuming this stuff, and also navigating it with people who are, not black or brown?
Hmm. See if I can
Sorry,
tell
that was
my
kind of
sister.
convoluted.
That was a lot, but
So,
I feel like I'm following you anyway. So let's go to the first question again.
yeah.
The first one was we're speaking to.
The first one we're speaking to is kind of communal activities that you feel would be beneficial
All right.
to consume a lot of the knowledge that is is currently existent?
So this is just what I hold for myself. I'm more about independent compensatory action, which
Mm-hmm.
means, holding yourself to a standard. You have the most power over yourself. So it's important for you to find out the cycles of your body. You know that you eat a certain food, you eat so much, and then your stomach feels full, and you've had enough. But if you eat this, you find your sweet spot, then you can continue and you can maintain that. So I suggest that everyone find their sweet spot. For me, I can
Mm-hmm.
go 16 hours straight studying in the books, sometimes 20, right? But then I need I need to have a good night's sleep. I don't need to hear any noise. I don't really want to talk to anyone the first 2 hours of me waking up, you know, and then I need to have a workout, and then I'm good. So it's your sweet spot is how much can you as an individual ingest,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to digest that information and be able to share that. But that's something you do with yourself first. A lot of us, and I try not to do this, and I have people who are like, dude, you're studying all this stuff. How come you're not talking about it? One, I don't know if it's legit, so I'm not going to talk about it yet. And two, I haven't digested it yet because
Mm-hmm.
I know what it's like to have time to digest knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and it's knowledge. What is knowledge until it becomes wisdom, and it doesn't become something you can apply it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm what I'm applying for the most part, and then when it comes to the community aspect, you'll naturally bring things to the community that are beneficial. And I believe, like, yeah, everyone learn as much as you can, learn, but learn it and put it and apply it, and then share what you're applying, and keep in mind that what works for you may not work for everyone. So what we have as an impediment to us is one, the ability to communicate beyond the programming, because we suffer from programming. So where we start to communicate something, and if it triggers something in you, then we get loud, we get over each other, things happen, and then we're not really getting to the point. So in every communication, it's a discipline in getting to, is this going to be constructive? What we have is we're in a system that's deconstructing us, that's destructive. And so how can we, because it benefits everyone. Everything that we do at from this end of the spectrum benefits everyone, including people that are mistreating us. Because what we need to do, what we're trying to do, are things that are right for humanity, for our humanity first and foremost, which extends, you know, just like the mistreatment is. Even if we feel like we're being the most mistreated, everyone's getting it because we're all in the same place. So in terms of community action, I say take the time and figure out each individual sweet spot for what you want to learn, what's important to you, which that's the meditation, right? And what's healthy for you, and then compare it to something so that you can make sure you're not fooling yourself, because it's easy to do when you
Yeah.
when you spend a lot of the time get in the. So then we come together as a community with an intention. So again, that goes back to the intimacy. Community action
Mm-hmm.
is intimacy as well. I see everything now
Mm-hmm.
in the context of intimacy. I always have. I just put my finger on it a couple months back, and that opened up a new genius for me.
What would you say your definition of intimacy is?
For me, intimacy is witnessing your journey, witnessing, being witnessed, and navigating for a space of constructively getting closer to one another. But
Mm-hmm.
that's going to include conflict. That's going to include disagreement. That's going to include, intimacy isn't just sex. It's a mental navigation. It's a spiritual navigation. It's a physical navigation. It's an emotional navigation, and in a conflict navigation. But it's going through whatever we go through on this journey with the intention of coming into a deeper understanding and a deeper proximity, which, to have a real proximity to something, to really get close to something, it means it takes vulnerability and the willingness to be honest, and integrity, and again intention, because you can forget what you're doing. So I want intimacy with life, and
Mm-hmm.
this is what it's been about. And so part of that means I already know I can hold space for a person to present all of who they are, because when I see a person, I'm seeing something different than what we're taught to see with each other, and I honor
Mm-hmm.
that. And so it's not for me to force you to see that, but if you want to see it and you want someone to walk and hold a vision of who you are saying you are with you, then that's where I come in. It's called an activation. This is part of my soul and DNA coding that happens in these connections. So even if I'm quiet, it's happening. I know,
Mm-hmm.
which is good because I'm Albert. It's weird when Albert's quiet.
You guys will
People get
get.
worried.
um, so okay, so you said a couple things, and I've watched your lives. We've talked. And we're different in this sense. And I'm wondering what piece of intimacy or yeah, what piece you think intimacy plays in that. So for me, um, I I consider myself very empathetic and empathic, where
Mhm.
I can feel people's energy very clearly. Um,
Yeah.
and to the point where, it's overwhelming to me. And so, it's funny. So, was this last night? It was last night or the other night when you were doing a live with who you call your beloved, right?
Alpha.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
Alpha.
Yeah.
And you like the conversation was just so beautiful. Like it was like watching or listening to like, one of those romantic comedies where you have like a slight smirk on your face because you're
Oh,
like, oh, they're so cute.
yeah.
And and it was like soothing to me. So I actually, I closed my, it was kind of late too, right? I mean, oh,
Yeah.
you're on the West Coast, so
Yeah.
it was, yeah,
Okay.
so it was kind of late, and so I actually like dozed off a bit because it was really soothing. It was really like a beautiful like melodic banter that you guys were having, and I guess I dozed off a bit, and the phone was on my chest, and it hit like the laugh emojis,
Uh
and
huh.
I woke up because you were like, "Hey, shout out Akilah," and I was like, "Oh,"
That's
but I
so.
was still hearing you. Yeah, it was. I was just like, but so that's like I feel things very strongly like that, and as such, I can't take on too many people's things. Like I have to almost, keep people at arm's length because otherwise, like it like engulfs me. You, on the other hand, are like, I got the space, I got the capacity. So, what do you feel like the difference is there?
Okay. The capacity that I have is from me exploring what's called the feminine side of my energetics. Or you can say you've got the positive and negative, but we'll call them masculine and feminine, right? So these are
Mhm.
just energy. So the feminine aspects, which our sisters embody perfectly, that empathy, right, is the ability to feel within
Mhm.
yourself. So for me,
Mhm.
I've always been an empath, and so that was
Mhm.
like it was like disempowering for a time because shit was just too much, especially with you
Mhm.
come from a lot of family, we're all in the house together, and we're on different layers. Or I go to live in Baltimore, and I'm like surrounded by different apartments, that kind of life. And so
Mhm.
like what I've had to learn, which is part of the journey for all empaths, is how to energetically create boundaries.
Mhm.
And like cells of our body are a perfect example. Cells have a semi-permeable membrane around them. So some
Mhm.
things are allowed and some things have to go out at the same token to maintain a balance. So it's not that I take on everything and I hold it inside. It's that I've learned, and it's been some interesting journeys of how I've learned these things, which
Mhm.
we'll talk offline. But like being able to receive and allow out. So I can do this with a person. You sit and you share all that you are, what's going on with you, the worst of whatever. Well, I'm not. I'm feeling it because I can hold that space with you, but I'm also transmuting it, transmuting like what they talk about in alchemy, right? So my
Mhm.
is the ability to take that energy, which most can do, and which Black women do magnificently, whether they're
Mhm.
aware of it or not. And all women, the feminine, right? And even but men as well, who are in their feminine qualities, are able
Mhm.
to receive and allow. Okay, this is what is. There's that allowance there. Does it have to be right? Does it have to be wrong? It's not for me to say, but I'm here witnessing with you, and that's powerful in and of itself. And so
Mhm.
this is a helpful tip for the empath is to really, it's like the 4 minute mile, right? People thought you couldn't run the
Mhm.
mile that fast, and one person did it, and then everyone was able to
Mhm.
do it. And so like
Mhm.
I'm aware, I become aware in my mind that, oh, there is no spoon. Like I'm everything that exists. I'm connected to all of it. There is no disconnection.
Mhm.
If I'm
Mhm.
feeling something from you, it's just a feeling. Let me take it, but let me just allow it to pass through me. But let me pay
Mhm.
attention to it when it passes so that I can be with you in that feeling. And this is
Mhm.
what's lacking, right? Say we're in a society where the overall system is actually a system that gaslights you. It's narcissistic.
Mhm.
Shit to you and says, I didn't do that to you. And you're like, but I could swear, maybe you didn't. And then you go
Mhm.
and do it to someone else and you do the same thing. And
Mhm.
so I've been working to, again, just root out all that shit for myself, that
Mhm.
nonsense, as I call it, because it doesn't make sense,
Right.
you know? And yeah, not to go off topic or anything, but like, I think that's important. It's been
Yeah.
important.
No, it's definitely not off topic. Um, Intention. So we've
Yeah.
talked about, we've said that word a couple times, and I think that, some people may just take it for granted. What is your definition of intention, and what are the intentions that you hold now and in other situations?
Magnificent. Magnificent. So intention for me is you have this mind, but you have something else that's navigating the physical machinery, right? And that thing takes breath and it does something with it. And so I'm aligned with, connecting with that. The breath that I have is connected to where I want it to go. What do I want to do on a daily basis? How do I want to show up? I'm getting more meticulous with it, but also simplifying, right? Simplifying. We make things really complicated. Intention is really what you want to do and why.
Hmm.
Why? And then taking that, because what we're doing is we take in a lot of stuff and it has us doing stuff and we don't know why. We're just doing it. We think it's what we want to do. So
Hmm.
connecting with your voice and connecting with what you feel drawn to doing on this planet, in this body, for the time that you are having a life in that frame of Akilah and in this frame of Ezriyah, and executing that and saying, is this action constructively getting me there to where I want to be? And also why? Why do I want to do it? So
Hmm.
my intention is to bring more awareness and more activation in terms of the realms of intimacy, because I see that really diving into what intimacy is me seeing into you, you seeing into me, but seeing the connection between the two of us. The dude that was on George Floyd's neck, he didn't look him in his eyeball. Be a real man and look me in the eyeball when you choke me out. See if, and is there anything behind your eyes, right? So like having a soul, when you look into another person's soul, which I've done quite a few times on this journey, that I'm like, man, I cannot, like, who am I? Aside from, I'm also a soul, which is great. And
Hmm.
even looking into your own eyes in the mirror, eye gazing is a very beautiful way to connect with someone, but also with yourself. And it's
Hmm.
also hard. A lot of people don't look people in the eyes. So,
And
because,
to that point, it's really, I'm sorry to cut you off, this will be quick, but now that, the masks are the vibe for as long as that's the case, you can't see anything but people's eyes. And
yeah,
so I'm definitely a person that likes to keep eye contact. I think that there's a point where it's like I'm staring into your soul, but
yeah,
I think it's also important because your eyes, windows to the soul, and that's very. I feel like that's very real. And so now that that's all that you can see, um, I think that that alone is making things more intimate, which is contrary to, what intuition would tell you. It's like, well, you can't. And I was talking to my dad about this. I was like, it's kind of weird that you can't see people's full faces. Like I'm smiling at people, but they can't see me. Like they can't see
yeah.
the smile. And
Hmm.
he's like, all you need to see is the eyes. And so I started paying a little bit more attention. And it's like, oh yeah, it's like way more intimate almost.
Intimate. It's way more intimate. I love it personally,
Mhm.
And it's like, because what comes out is like you sit with someone and stare into their eyes. For you, you're gonna feel what they're feeling, and you're gonna feel what you're feeling.
Mhm.
And what words? It's not a word thing. It's like a real communication. And so,
Mhm.
so I've always been a fan of that. I remember my brother was like, when I came back from Africa the last time, I wasn't well. The second time
Mhm.
I had some things going on, and
Mhm.
so he was like, "Bro, man,
We have 25 seconds remaining, so we can
okay,
jump back on. But
just speaking to like S, don't over intensify your stares with people. I know you got the intense stare, but we in Alabama now. Let's just mellow it out." I was like, I was literally practicing. Like when I went outside, I was like, "Hey, like okay."
uh,
But like I remember when I first came back, I'd be all in the grill.